Welcome to Trend Reddit, where I share interesting, useful, and inspiring content. Let's explore the world together through the videos I create. Don't forget to click the follow button so you don't miss anything new. Thank you for visiting and hope we have great experiences together. The bustling ambience of La Mer, a renowned New York restaurant, buzzed with lively discussions about profits and market shares. The air was thick with the rich aroma of fine cuisine and the clinking of glasses, echoing the corporate success stories of the guests dining in the opulent setting. At the center of the room, Ethan Walker sat at a large round table, dressed in a tailored suit that mirrored his status as a high-powered executive at one of the city's top firms. Ethan's eyes, however, betrayed a deeper turmoil. While his colleagues animatedly discussed quarterly projections and business strategies, he felt emotionally detached, an observer rather than a participant in both the conversation and life itself. Each boast of profit margins felt hollow, a reminder of the sacrifices he had made on his climb to the top. As he absent-mindedly stirred his glass of expensive whiskey, Ethan's gaze drifted across the restaurant, scanning the sea of unfamiliar faces until it landed on a striking figure that sent a jolt through his chest. There, near the entrance, stood Danielle, his former lover, looking as radiant as ever. A wave of nostalgia swept over him, and he felt the walls he had built around his heart start to crumble. The years faded away, and suddenly, he was not the successful businessman but the young man deeply in love, facing an unexpected storm of emotions. Danielle wasn't alone. Beside her stood a young man who bore a striking resemblance to Ethan himself. His heart raced as memories flooded back, the laughter, the promises, the life they had envisioned together before everything fell apart. It had been 25 years since they had last seen each other, and the distance between them felt like a chasm, filled with regret and unspoken words. The sight of Danielle ignited a fierce internal battle within Ethan. The last time they had spoken, he had chosen his career over their relationship, believing ambition was the key to happiness. Now, facing her after all this time, he was filled with conflicting emotions, anger, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of loss. As he watched, Danielle turned, and their eyes met. Time seemed to freeze. Her expression was a mixture of surprise and something deeper, hurt, perhaps. The young man beside her, presumably her son, caught Ethan's attention again. The resemblance was uncanny, and with each passing second, the realization hit him harder: this was Dylan, the son he never knew he had. Ethan's heart sank as he recalled their last conversation, the accusations, the tears, and the finality in Danielle's voice when she had told him to leave and never return. It was a moment he had tried to forget, yet it was ingrained in his memory, a painful reminder of what he had sacrificed on the altar of ambition. As he steeled himself, Ethan rose from his seat, each step towards them heavy with anxiety. When he reached them, the tension was palpable. "Danielle," he started, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan," she replied, her tone cool yet edged with emotion. Dylan's expression shifted from curiosity to confusion, and then to anger. "You're him, aren't you?" he spat, his voice sharp. "The one who walked away. The one who didn't care." Ethan felt the weight of those words like a punch to the gut. He opened his mouth to explain, to defend himself, but the memories of the past felt like a ghost he couldn't shake off. "I cared," he finally managed, looking at both of them, his heart racing. "I made choices. Choices I thought were right at the time." Danielle stepped forward, her eyes flashing with old pain. "You chose your career over us, Ethan. We were supposed to build a life together, and you threw it away for what?" Her voice cracked. "For this?" The confrontation ignited a firestorm of emotions within Ethan. He felt the regret clawing at him, the realization of what he had lost flooding back. I didn't know then," he said, his voice trembling. "I thought success would bring me happiness, but all it's brought me is this emptiness." Dylan's expression softened for a moment, and he stepped closer to Ethan, his voice quieter but no less intense. "You don't know what it was like for me. Growing up without a father. Always feeling like I was missing something." Ethan's heart broke at Dylan's words, a raw, unfiltered emotion crashing over him. "I'm sorry," he said, the weight of his apology heavy in the air. I can't change the past, but I want to be part of your life now. If you'll let me. The tension in the air was thick, heavy with unresolved feelings. Danielle looked at her son, then back at Ethan, a mix of hope and skepticism in her gaze. Ethan, it won't be easy, she warned, her voice a mixture of caution and the flicker of hope. You've missed so much already. This isn't just about you. I know, Ethan replied earnestly, his heart racing with determination. I'm willing to try. I want us to have a chance. After the confrontation, Ethan felt the weight of his choices bearing down on him. The successful career he had built felt hollow in light of the profound connection he had lost. He stepped outside into the cool New York air, reflecting on the confrontation and the emotions that had surged within him. He couldn't ignore the emptiness that success had brought him. The lavish dinners, the accolades, the status, it all paled in comparison to the possibility of rebuilding a relationship with his son. He realized he had been chasing after something that was never going to fulfill him. As he walked down the street, the city lights twinkling above him, a new determination sparked within him. He would make amends, rebuild what had been lost, and he wouldn't shy away from the challenges ahead. In the days that followed, Ethan reached out to Danielle, proposing to meet at a cafe. He wanted to discuss how to approach Dylan, how to start the process of reconnecting with the son he never knew. When they met, Danielle looked hesitant yet hopeful. Ethan, it's going to be a long road. Dylan is hurt, and it'll take time to rebuild trust. I understand, Ethan said, his resolve unwavering. I'm committed to this. I won't give up. Their conversation was filled with the complexities of rebuilding a relationship. Ethan was prepared to face the consequences of his past decisions, ready to prioritize family over career ambitions. He knew he had a long way to go, but that didn't deter him. He was determined to walk away from a significant merger he had been pursuing, a bold decision that would send ripples through his corporate world. As he sat across from Dylan at the cafe, nerves fluttered in his stomach. Dylan entered, his expression guarded but curious. You wanted to talk? He asked, his tone neutral. Yeah, Ethan replied, a lump forming in his throat. I know things have been rough, and I know I've missed so much. But I want to change that. I want to be a part of your life. Dylan looked at him, uncertainty flickering in his eyes, but there was something else, perhaps a glimmer of hope. It's not going to be easy, he warned, his voice barely above a whisper. I know, Ethan said, leaning forward. But I'm willing to try. I want us to have a chance. As they began to talk, the initial tension slowly dissolved, replaced by cautious curiosity. Ethan felt a spark of hope ignite within him. He knew rebuilding their relationship would be a gradual process filled with challenges, but he was ready to face them. He reflected on how his priorities were shifting, recognizing the importance of family and connection over corporate success. This was a new beginning for him, a chance to rewrite the narrative of his life. With determination burning in his chest, Ethan embraced the possibility of change, ready to face whatever lay ahead in his quest for redemption and reconnection with his son. Ethan's heart raced as he sat in the lavish restaurant, his thoughts swirling with memories and regrets. As he scanned the room, taking in the high-powered executives around him, his gaze unexpectedly landed on Danielle once again. This time, however, she wasn't alone. A young man walked in beside her, and Ethan felt his breath hitch in his throat. The young man bore a striking resemblance to him, same dark hair, the same piercing blue eyes. It was as if he were looking at a younger version of himself. The realization struck him like a bolt of lightning, and the warmth of nostalgia quickly turned cold. Danielle's laughter rang through the air, and Ethan felt an old ache resurface, a feeling he had buried deep beneath the layers of success he had amassed. Memories of their time together flashed through his mind, their late-night talks, the way she had always challenged him to be better, and the dreams they once shared. Now, that life seemed like a distant echo. As they approached the entrance, Ethan caught snippets of their conversation. The young man, Dylan, seemed animated, sharing stories that made Danielle laugh. The sight stirred a mixture of emotions in Ethan, envy, regret, and a sharp pang of longing for the life he had forsaken. With a resolve he didn't fully understand, Ethan stood, feeling an irresistible pull to confront the ghosts of his past. He approached them, his pulse quickening with each step. When he finally stood before them, it felt surreal. If you think the story is good, leave a comment with the number 1, and if not, please subscribe to the channel. If the video is helpful to you, don't forget to hit the like button. Danielle, he breathed, his voice trembling slightly. Her eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Ethan, she replied, her tone a mixture of surprise and cautious wariness. Dylan's gaze shifted between them, confusion marring his youthful features. Who are you? He demanded, stepping protectively closer to Danielle. I'm Ethan, he stammered, searching for the right words, feeling the weight of years of absence press down on him. I didn't know you had a son. Danielle's expression hardened, and Ethan could see the storm of emotions swirling beneath her calm facade. You left, Ethan. You chose your career over us, remember? The accusation hit him like a punch to the gut. He had thought of that moment countless times, replaying their last conversation over and over in his mind. I know. I made mistakes. But I want to understand. I want to know him. Dylan crossed his arms, his stance defensive. You're not my father. You never were. You left us without looking back. Ethan felt a mix of shame and anger. I was young, I was foolish. I thought I was doing what was best for my career. Danielle stepped forward, her eyes blazing with old hurt. And what did that get you, Ethan? Success? Wealth? You threw away the chance to be a part of our lives. You lost us. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat dry as the weight of her words sunk in. The years of silence, the choices he had made, the consequences he had ignored, everything collided in that moment, threatening to overwhelm him. I never wanted to lose you, he said, his voice barely a whisper, laden with the gravity of his regret. I didn't know how to balance it all. But I'm here now. I want to reconnect. I want to be part of his life if he'll let me. Dylan scoffed, shaking his head. You think it's that easy? Just because you show up after 25 years doesn't mean you get to play the dad card. Dylan, Danielle said softly, her gaze shifting between them. This is a lot for both of you. Maybe we should take a step back. But Ethan couldn't let that happen. No, I need to hear this. I need to understand how you feel, Dylan. I can't change the past, but I can try to make things right. Dylan's expression softened for just a moment, but the anger returned quickly. You have no idea what it was like growing up without a father. You missed everything, the birthdays, the graduations. You were supposed to be there. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his chest as he considered the boy's words. I know I can't make up for lost time, but I'm here now. I want to be part of your life, if you'll let me. Silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of unspoken feelings. Danielle watched, her expression torn between hope and skepticism. I don't know if I can trust you, Dylan said finally, his voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. You left us. Why should I believe you now? Because I'm ready to change, Ethan replied, his heart pounding with sincerity. I've spent years building a life that felt empty without you. I want to be part of your life, even if it's just a small step at a time. Danielle's gaze softened as she looked at her son, then back at Ethan. This won't be easy for any of us, she warned. But if you're serious, we can try. Dylan hesitated, then nodded slowly. I guess we can talk. But it's going to take time. Ethan felt a glimmer of hope, but he also understood the long road ahead. The confrontation had opened a door, but he knew it wouldn't be simple to walk through. As they stood together in that restaurant, the weight of the past hung heavy in the air, but for the first time in years, Ethan felt a flicker of possibility, a chance to reconnect with the family he had lost. Ethan's heart raced as he processed the weight of Dylan's words. The young man's anger was palpable, a raw emotion that stirred something deep within Ethan. Memories flooded back, a mix of love and loss that he had tried to bury for years. The laughter, the promises of a future together, and the decisions that had shattered that dream played out like a haunting film reel in his mind. As they settled into a booth at the cafe, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Ethan felt as though he were sitting on the precipice of a chasm, the distance between him and his son both heartbreaking and insurmountable. Dylan sat across from him, his expression a mixture of curiosity and defiance. Danielle occupied the seat beside Dylan, watching the two men with a cautious gaze. "So, what do you want from me?" Dylan asked, crossing his arms over his chest defensively. His eyes were fierce, searching for the truth in Ethan's expression. Ethan swallowed hard, searching for the right words. "I want to know you," he replied, his voice steady. "I want to understand what you've been through and be part of your life moving forward." Danielle interjected, her voice calm yet firm. "Ethan, this isn't just about you. Dylan has every right to be angry. He grew up without you, and he has his own story that he needs to share." Ethan nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I know. And I'm here to listen. I can't change the past, but I want to try and make things better." Dylan's gaze shifted, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "You say that now, but how do I know you won't just walk away again? You did it before." The accusation stung, and Ethan felt the weight of his failures crash over him like a wave. "I know I made mistakes," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I've spent years thinking about my choices, and they haunt me. I can't undo what I did, but I'm committed to trying to be a part of your life if you'll let me." Danielle glanced at her son, her expression filled with a mix of hope and apprehension. "Dylan, this is a lot to process. Maybe you need time to think about it." "No," Dylan replied, his voice firm. "I need to know what this is really about." "Why now? Why after all these years?" Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the pressure of the moment. "I've built a successful career, but it's come at a cost. I've realized that all the money and accolades mean nothing without family. I've been lonely, and I don't want to be that man anymore." Dylan's expression softened for a brief moment before the walls came back up. "You think saying you're lonely makes it okay? You chose your career over us, Ethan. It's not that simple." "I know it's not," Ethan replied earnestly. "But I want to change. I want to understand you, to be there for you. I'm willing to put in the work, no matter how long it takes." Silence hung in the air as Dylan considered Ethan's words. Finally, he spoke, his voice quieter. "Okay, let's say I give you a chance. What does that even look like?" Ethan felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. "It means starting with small steps. I want to learn about your life, your interests, the things that matter to you. I want to be someone you can rely on." Dylan leaned back, his expression skeptical. "And what if I don't want that? What if I don't want you in my life?" "Then I'll respect your decision," Ethan replied, his heart heavy but resolute. "But I'll still be here, ready when you are." Danielle broke the tension, attempting to steer the conversation. "Why don't we start with something simple? Dylan, why don't you tell Ethan about your hobbies or what you're passionate about?" Dylan hesitated, glancing at Ethan before turning his focus to his mother. "I like music," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I play guitar." Ethan felt a warmth spread through him. "That's great. Do you play in a band or anything?" Dylan shook his head, a flicker of embarrassment crossing his face. "No, it's just something I do on my own. It helps me relax." Ethan nodded, eager to encourage him. "I'd love to hear you play sometime. Music has a way of connecting people, doesn't it?" Dylan met Ethan's gaze, a mix of uncertainty and curiosity dancing in his eyes. "Maybe." The conversation continued, each word a tentative step towards rebuilding a relationship that had been shattered by time and choices. Ethan listened intently, asking questions and engaging with Dylan's interests. It was a slow dance, but he could feel the walls around Dylan's heart starting to crack. As they spoke, Ethan caught glimpses of the young man he could have known all along, witty, passionate, and deeply affected by the absence of his father. It became increasingly clear that the journey to reconnect would require patience, understanding, and vulnerability on both sides. Danielle watched with a mix of pride and concern, recognizing the importance of this moment. "Ethan, this is a good start. Just remember, it's going to take time. Trust is not built overnight." "I understand," Ethan replied, feeling a sense of responsibility wash over him. "I'm in this for the long haul." After their conversation, as they prepared to leave the cafe, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. There was still so much work to be done, but he had taken the first step. With the weight of the past still lingering, there was also a glimmer of hope shining through the darkness. As they walked outside into the bustling streets of New York, Ethan knew the journey ahead would be filled with challenges. But he was willing to face them, determined to bridge the gap that had long separated him from his son. After the cafe conversation, Ethan felt a mixture of hope and anxiety swirling within him. The weight of his past choices lingered heavily on his shoulders, but for the first time in years, he felt a flicker of possibility. As he stepped back into the bustling streets of New York, the city's energy buzzed around him, yet he felt detached from it, as if he were floating in a bubble of his own making. In the days that followed, Ethan reflected deeply on the confrontation and the emotional roller coaster that had transpired. Each moment spent with Dylan made him acutely aware of what he had lost and the monumental task ahead. He spent hours contemplating his priorities, recognizing that his corporate success, while fulfilling in some ways, had left him with a gaping void. Determined to make amends, Ethan reached out to Danielle again. They arranged to meet at a local park, a serene setting that felt worlds apart from the chaos of the city. Sitting on a bench surrounded by the colors of autumn, he could sense the change in the air, both outside and within himself. "Danielle," he began, searching for the right words. "I want to be honest with you. I realize that reconnecting with Dylan won't be easy. I need your guidance. You've been a constant in his life, and I'm just an outsider trying to step back in." Danielle looked at him thoughtfully, her expression softening. "Ethan, it's clear you're trying, and that means a lot. But Dylan has been hurt. He's had to navigate life without a father, and that pain runs deep. If you want to rebuild this relationship, you need to show him you're committed." "I understand," Ethan replied, a knot forming in his stomach. "What can I do to prove that to him?" "Start by being present," she suggested. "Don't just reach out when it's convenient for you. Show up consistently, even when it's tough. You need to be there for the small moments, not just the big ones." Ethan nodded, absorbing her words. He recognized that this journey would require more than just heartfelt promises, it demanded action and dedication. "I'll do whatever it takes. I want to be someone he can rely on." As they talked, Ethan felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew he couldn't erase the past, but he could take steps to forge a new future. He shared his plans to attend Dylan's upcoming guitar performance at a local coffee shop, a small venue where young artists showcased their talents. "I want to be there to support him," Ethan said, excitement creeping into his voice. Danielle smiled gently. "That's a great start. Just remember, he may not react the way you hope. Give him space, and let him take the lead." The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions for Ethan. He practiced his supportive lines in the mirror, rehearsing how he would express his encouragement to Dylan. The performance night arrived, and he felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. What if Dylan was still angry? What if he shut Ethan out entirely? Arriving early at the coffee shop, Ethan took a moment to soak in the atmosphere. The warm glow of the string lights hanging from the ceiling mixed with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, creating an inviting ambience. He spotted Dylan at the far end of the room, tuning his guitar, surrounded by a small group of friends. The sight of him sent a wave of emotion crashing over Ethan. When Dylan caught sight of him, his expression hardened, and he quickly averted his gaze. Ethan's heart sank, but he knew he had to stay resolute. He approached the stage area, settling into a seat near the front, determined to be a visible presence in Dylan's life. As the evening progressed, various performers took to the stage, sharing their music and stories. Ethan watched Dylan's friends go up, each act met with cheers and applause. But when it was finally Dylan's turn, an intense silence enveloped the room. He walked up to the microphone, guitar slung over his shoulder, his demeanor a mix of nerves and confidence. Ethan felt his heart race as Dylan began to play. The opening chords rang out, filling the space with a melody that resonated deep within him. Dylan's voice followed, rich and full of emotion, singing about love, loss, and longing. Each note felt like a direct line to Ethan's heart, a reflection of the struggles they both faced. Ethan felt a swell of pride, but it was intertwined with regret. As he listened, he realized how much he had missed, how much they had both lost. The lyrics were raw and honest, telling stories that echoed their own lives. The performance lasted only a few minutes, but to Ethan, it felt like a lifetime. When Dylan finished, the room erupted into applause. Ethan joined in, clapping loudly, but he could see that Dylan's face was a mixture of relief and uncertainty. The young man scanned the audience and finally met Ethan's gaze. In that moment, there was a flicker of something, perhaps recognition, or maybe even a hint of connection. After the performance, as Dylan stepped off the stage, Ethan stood, waiting for him to come over. He felt vulnerable but determined. When Dylan reached him, there was a moment of silence before either spoke. "Hey," Dylan said, his voice cautious. "Hey," Ethan replied, searching for the right words. "You were amazing up there. I'm proud of you." Dylan looked at him, his expression guarded. "Thanks. But why are you really here, Ethan? Why now?" Ethan took a deep breath, ready to lay his heart bare. "I'm here because I want to be part of your life. I've realized how much I've missed and how much I want to change that. I want to support you, be there for you, and earn your trust." Dylan's eyes searched Ethan's face for sincerity. "It's not that simple, you know. You can't just walk back in and expect everything to be fine." "I know," Ethan said, feeling the weight of the truth in his words. "But I'm willing to work for it. I'm here for the long haul, no matter how long it takes." Dylan nodded slowly, the tension between them easing just a fraction. "I'll think about it," he replied, a hint of vulnerability creeping into his voice. Ethan felt a sense of relief wash over him. This was just a small step, but it was a step nonetheless. As they parted ways that evening, Ethan realized that while the path to reconciliation would be long and filled with challenges, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The glimmer of hope he had felt earlier was now a steady flame, guiding him toward the possibility of rebuilding the connection he had once lost. As the weeks unfolded, Ethan found himself in a whirlwind of emotions and new beginnings. The conversation with Dylan at the coffee shop marked a pivotal moment, opening a door that had long been shut. Each day brought new challenges, but it also offered opportunities for connection and growth. Ethan was committed to proving that he was ready to be a part of his son's life, and he embraced that commitment wholeheartedly. He began by showing up more consistently. Whether it was attending Dylan's gigs at local venues, reaching out through texts, or simply being present in the moments that mattered, Ethan made it a point to be there. The apprehension Dylan had displayed gradually shifted to cautious acceptance, and with each interaction, they forged a tentative bond that felt fragile yet full of promise. Danielle remained a steady presence, guiding Ethan as he navigated this new terrain. She understood the intricacies of their relationship and the delicate balance needed to rebuild trust. One afternoon in the park, she encouraged Ethan to share more about his life, to let Dylan see the man he had become. "Open up to him," she advised, her voice gentle yet firm. "Let him see your vulnerabilities. It's important for him to understand that you're not just the father he never knew, but a real person with your own struggles." Ethan took her advice to heart. He began sharing stories from his life, his struggles in the corporate world, the sacrifices he had made, and the loneliness that had followed his success. Each story added layers to his identity, allowing Dylan to see him not just as a father trying to make amends but as a man who had faced challenges and learned from them. The more Ethan opened up, the more Dylan seemed to respond. They began to share laughter, and in those moments, the distance that had once felt insurmountable started to shrink. Each small victory, whether it was a shared joke or a meaningful conversation, built a bridge over the chasm of the past. One day, as they walked through the park, Dylan suddenly paused, looking thoughtful. "You know," he said, "I didn't think I'd ever feel comfortable talking to you like this. It's still weird, but it's not as bad as I thought." Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. "I'm glad to hear that. I want this to be a safe space for you. No pressure, just honesty." Dylan nodded, and for a moment, they shared a silence filled with understanding. It was a step forward, and both felt it. Despite the progress they were making, Ethan knew that there would be obstacles ahead. The scars of the past were not easily erased. There would be moments of doubt, anger, and frustration, but he was ready to face them head-on. He recognized that healing was a process, and he was committed to being a part of it, no matter how long it took. As autumn rolled into winter, Ethan found himself reflecting more on the nature of family and the bonds that hold it together. He realized that the past, while painful, could be a source of strength if they chose to learn from it. He had sacrificed much in the name of ambition, but now he saw a path toward redemption, a chance to rewrite the narrative of his life. The day finally came when Dylan invited Ethan to a family gathering, an intimate event that included friends and close relatives. It was a significant step, and Ethan felt a mix of excitement and anxiety as he prepared for the occasion. He wanted to make a good impression, to show that he was serious about being part of Dylan's life. When he arrived, he was greeted by the warm atmosphere of laughter and conversation. He spotted Danielle across the room, her eyes filled with encouragement. As Ethan mingled, he found himself engaging with Dylan's friends, sharing stories, and participating in the joyous atmosphere. He could see Dylan watching him, a mixture of curiosity and caution in his eyes. Later in the evening, as the group gathered around for a toast, Ethan raised his glass. "To family," he said, his voice steady and filled with emotion. "To new beginnings and the journey ahead." The room fell silent, and he felt the weight of every gaze upon him. But in that moment, he didn't falter. He knew that every person in that room had their own story, their own struggles, and he was finally beginning to weave himself into this tapestry of family. Dylan's eyes met his, and for the first time, there was a hint of understanding and acceptance reflected in his expression. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. They were no longer two strangers navigating the aftermath of lost time, they were starting to become a family. As the evening progressed, Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He knew the road ahead would be filled with ups and downs, but he was ready to embrace the challenge. The journey to rebuild their relationship was far from over, but for the first time, he felt hopeful about the future. Ethan realized that the complexity of family dynamics was not just about blood, it was about connection, commitment, and the willingness to confront the past in order to build a better tomorrow. He was no longer just a man chasing success, he was a father seeking redemption and a son trying to understand his place in a new reality. With determination in his heart and a newfound sense of purpose, Ethan stepped forward into the future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey would be long, but it was a journey he was willing to undertake, knowing that with each step, he was moving closer to healing the wounds of the past and forging a new path for their future together. If you think the story is good, leave a comment with the number 1, and if not, please subscribe to the channel. If the video is helpful to you, don't forget to hit the like button.